Right, everyone, thank you for joining and welcome to Using AI to Reduce the Cost and Complexity of Cloud Change. I will be one of your hosts, James, Head of Marketing here at Forms Pro, joined by my colleague Paul.
Good to meet you.
He's our head of infrastructure, which is a good job because I know I'm here to talk about the AI side of things. I know very little about infrastructure, up to and including how to spell it sometimes. So Paul's here to correct me on all the stuff I get wrong, right?
Absolutely. Yeah, I bring almost 2 decades worth of business real world experience in this sector. So yeah, I want to help today give some real world guidance on how it can underpin any innovation you want to look at. Yeah, so let's run through the slides and we can kind of
Excellent.
talk through
Yeah.
it.
So, Forms Pro, who are we and why are you listening to us? We were founded back in 2012, as you can see from the slide, with quite an interesting goal, which was to service the non-profit sector almost exclusively. Our first client was Anthony Nolan, the blood cancer charity, and I'm happy to sort of say they're still a client of ours today with a big sort of continuous improvement plan. And it says a lot about us that we like working with clients over multiple projects and years, and I think that says quite a bit about our working relationship. The reason we were founded, though, was at the time, a lot of software houses were taking on non-profit clients, but they were almost taking them on by mistake, almost as oh, we've got a new client. And the non-profit sector doesn't work. The sector just doesn't work like that. You have very unique needs, requirements, budget constraints, and you almost need a dedicated non-profit sort of partner, which is where Forms Pro were founded. We still to this day solely look at, I say solely, we still solely look after our non-profit clients. We've sort of expanded since then, so about 50% of our client base is still non-profit, and we like that sort of level of commercial versus non-profit, and hopefully it will always be like that. And we do a little bit of everything: enterprise development, data and AI, which Paul will be talking a little bit about because that department works very closely with his practice. We do consultancy work for you. We do a lot of project rescues. Quite often, somebody will spend a large amount of money on a project, and for whatever reason, it just doesn't take off. It just doesn't work. The tech isn't there. The human adoption element isn't there, and quite often we specialize in sort of coming in and fixing that and getting everything back on track. But as I said at the start, we don't like to just leave you. So we'll do tech support, we'll do software training. And that last one, system health check, will actually come in for free and just sort of give you a body for a day or two. They'll look under the hood at all your sort of infrastructure, your software, your systems, your platform, and actually create a roadmap for you. And if you want us to implement that for you, absolutely fantastic. If you want to take that to one of your partners, well, that's where Project Rescue kicks back in 2 years later, right, Paul?
That's right.
And so just to sort of like prove it, you can see we've worked with multiple non-profits. Rethink Mental Illness, one of my favourite charities, Little Princess Trust. They do great work, as I'm sure most of the non-profits on this call do. Duke of Edinburgh Awards, Down Syndrome's Association, to name but a few. But before you didn't come here to talk about Forms Pro, so let's get started. Before we do, though, I just want to give a quick thanks to Microsoft Elevate, formerly TSI, to getting this sorted for us. They're a fantastic part of the Microsoft sort of arm. They're actually part of Microsoft Philanthropy, the non-profit side of Microsoft, and not everybody realizes Microsoft has a non-profit arm, and their sort of mission is to empower every person and every organization on the planet to achieve more, and they actually look after non-profit and what's known as education at K13 and below. So not college, not higher education, but sort of like students and below. And they always ask me to ask this question: are we building machines to replace people or to help people thrive? I think it's a great question and it's a great ambitious goal. They have a huge global sort of commitment. They've donated a lot of money, as you can see, 4 billion global donation commitment. And actually, a lot of their staff sort of like try to match the donations they give, as do the partners. So we give huge concessions to our non-profit clients, either in terms of free work or actually in discounted rates. And I'm sure Paul will tell you some of our commercial clients would give their right arm to access our non-profit rates because some of them can be absolutely crazy. So, Paul, if you want to take back over, I'm going to shut up for a little bit, but shall we talk about why we're talking about this in the first place? Why has suddenly infrastructure become a big thing in 2026? And actually, how can AI help with that?
Absolutely, yeah. So obviously, the starting slide is the challenge, and let's be honest. When people first think about looking at a cloud transformation project, the initial reaction isn't excitement. There probably is a big sigh, a big take of breath, and yeah, they're in is an initial stage of uncertainty, and yeah, people could be overwhelmed at the prospect of what they're going to encounter. We fortunately, like I said, with almost 2 decades of consulting experience, have seen some very large scale organizations, down to some very smaller institutions, down to some higher education authorities we've worked with. So we've seen a full gamut. We tend to try to help provide some of that reassurance to kind of reduce that anxiety. And we initially would like to get people to kind of break down their challenges, but also work in a more phased and controlled way, to kind of make sure that that you can kind of keep a level of confidence around the initial undertaking. So let's dive into kind of the whys and wherefores. Yeah. Ooh,
so who because obviously talking about infrastructure, you say it's not interesting. I'm sure it's fascinating and everybody on this video is going to absolutely love it, but who's going to find this most useful? So if you come into an organization and go, hi, I want to talk infrastructure and cloud transformation, who's going to find this useful? Who do you normally talk to about this?
A lot of CIO people with risk governance, who deal with regulation, are keen to keep anything cloud related under scrutiny. Anyone who's facing scaling challenges, most organizations we find have got some level of technical debt. So there's some fragility in terms of the back end systems that they might have been working with for years. Every organisation has been asked to do more with less, and there's obviously increasing pressure to kind of future-proof and adopt AI. But before doing so, we think it's wholly important to kind of get a grasp on what you've got in your business first. So yeah, everyone is looking to do more with less, and there's increasing digital transformation initiatives emerging. So the cloud migrations and why people are, I suppose, overwhelmed.
They always do feel quite like a huge project, but yeah, a big part of this is actually with AI, they shouldn't and feel so overwhelming because there's a lot of cloud transformation, right? It's been around since the early noughties, and actually I remember when it first came out, and I'm sure you agree, people thought you were crazy sticking all your data in the cloud. It wasn't safe, it wasn't secure. Why wouldn't you want a server in your own office that you could protect? It's the de facto standard now, and AI is kind of in the same boat as cloud was back then. But there's actually a lot of that AI can do to help, right?
Yeah, massively, yeah. But I think it's baby steps initially before people go gung ho, and there is businesses we're speaking to all the time that are mandated to really force hard into AI. But again, we want to make sure that it's done in a measured way in order to not make it feel as overwhelming, because there are too many options. There's far too many opinions, and there's difficulty in aligning some of those. So often some of the foundation we try to do is to ensure that people shift their mindsets, and focus on legacy systems, reducing the silos within businesses in order to get them working more collaboratively. Kind of getting, like I've touched on earlier, getting some of the foundation in place in order to be able to confidently take the steps into adopting AI, and in doing so, in some of the things that we would look to try to talk to you about, that there is some early adoption AI that's as part of that before looking as generative AI, before you're looking at a more broadly agentic AI, perhaps.
Because I've been watching you work for a while now, and it sort of strikes me, it's what I find quite interesting. It isn't just a case of sort of picking up how you're currently working and then dropping it into a new cloud environment. There's a lot of previous work to do that to get your foundations right. As you say, make sure there's a lot of stuff that won't be documented. There's a lot of stuff that, oh, well, we've always done it like that. And suddenly you do a lift and shift and you keep doing it like that when there was never a need to do that in the first place, right?
Yeah, but there was also instances out there that there's some vendors that widely known, and I tread carefully without naming any names, but they're very virtualized. And a recent acquisition has meant that the new vendor owner, PE backing, they've put exorbitant uplifts on renewals for their estate. So people are looking at options to move away from these virtual environments into containerized environments. And we're helping people give real world options, how to innovate and go cloud native first. But sometimes that's a bit more progressive. Some more larger adopted cloud environments that they've got a grip on what they've done so far. I think a lot of the charity and kind of non-for-profits we're working with, we're also trying to help them earlier in the process that they may not have that level of maturity. So again, it's no cloud or client environment is strictly the same, but we can kind of draw on some of the real world experiences that we've had.
I'm sure all the non-profits perked up on the call when you suddenly meant saving money, because we all know. I mean, quick thumbs up. Who has loads of money? Who has loads of resources to throw at problems, or actually a quick heart? Who's the exact opposite and is constantly working with tight budgets and leaner teams and has to do with what they've got? See how shy everybody is, see if they want to interact. No, it looks like we've got quite a quiet audience today. So let's move on to the next slide. And this is a big one, right? Because a lot of our clients come to us because they don't know what they don't know, which is, I mean, we're all in the same boat. Nobody knows what they don't know. And actually, cloud migration, it sounds huge and scary. And I mean, I make jokes and I'm sort of like, well, what do you mean it's difficult, Paul? Isn't it just like copy, paste there? It's easy, right? But it's not that simple. And it scares people, which is why, but that fear just means people keep doing what they've always done, and they stick where they are and they keep paying the same money over and over. And let's try and break that down a little bit. I mean, what are some of the unknowns?
Everyone gets, and this isn't just non-for-profit, it's across the board. There's lots of legacy systems. There's poor configured environments. If it works, don't touch it. You kind of get used to burying your head in the sand just because you don't want to break anything. There's siloed teams, and probably more so in the non-for-profit sector, you've got fewer individuals, and there's a bit more hat switching required, and therefore, like the slides suggest, when Bob's on holiday, that's the person who you're used to going to for any server you need to provision or standing up a new environment, and without that person there, there is a single point of failure.
It becomes a much bigger problem when Bob actually leaves rather than just on holiday. That's always huge. Well, it's always a huge danger for a non-profit, right? So you've got one person with all this expert knowledge, and your server's patched and patched again and then patched again, and you didn't know what relies on what, and then suddenly Bob leaves and it's
Yeah, and on that, manual processes, they're slow. So if Bob's used to doing it in his specific way, hasn't adopted an automation process to undertake some of those tasks, so he can be looking at something else. It makes it difficult. But and some of the real world instances that people can take up to 10, 14 days to patch an environment when a patch is released. But when automation is properly adopted, you can bring that down to minutes, and that reduces the errors, the drain on the business moreover. So they also it's getting a grip on people having an understanding of the operation of costs of cloud, and helping initially to get a grip on the architecture so they can scale and they can properly adopt, really, is kind of
And
Oh my
you
God.
mentioned, and I meant to jump in, so I apologize, but you mentioned sort of legacy systems, and you sort of said, look, it's the same everywhere. And you're completely right, it is. I've always found, and I'm just wanting to make your experience, non-profits, because of their resource issues, tend to have to rely a lot on freeware. So rather than one paid for system that can probably do 5 things, you're going to find 7 freeware systems all trying to do little bits and talk to each other, and
Yeah.
can cause a bit of a headache, right?
Yeah, tool consolidation is imperative in these circumstances. And look, I come from a an infrastructure background that it really enjoys open source software. So there is lots and lots of very good open source software, and there isn't a silver bullet for all of these. Yeah, however, yeah, but what I find is that there is certainly a real world advice that we can give to help consolidate some of these.
Yeah, it is true. The freeware issues, the legacy systems, Bob leaving, non-profits feel this a lot more keener than our commercial sort of clients do, simply because they run leaner teams. They have to invest in those cheaper systems, not because they want them, but because that's what they're has been forced, not realizing that actually doing it once can save them a lot of money, not just in the long run, but sometimes in the short term and the middle term as well. Change budgets are always a tricky one, but we tend to take what I like to call a Lego approach. So, and we'll talk about this later down the road, but a huge, great big cloud migration doesn't have to be a great big huge thing, right, Paul? You can come in and just simplify one thing, let a non-profit start seeing instant sort of ROI, and then just move on to the next one with that saved cash, and then the next project with the saved cash, right? Because we love working with people over several years, rather when you get to know you, get to know your problems, rather than, all right, done, we've moved on, thanks very much, can we have our check?
Yeah, we firmly advocate that the approach we would adopt anyway. It's done in stages. It's done in a way that you feel comfortable. Yeah, the big bang approach would be the last. Yeah, and to be honest, it's counterintuitive to the way that we suggest that you work in a modern way anyway. So you plan, do, repeat, but you're always checking along. Continuous improvement is the mindset that we really adopt. So, but yeah, in terms of as this slide says, running lean teams, investing in cheaper systems. Everyone's trying to do more with less, not for profit, but they're trying to stretch every pound to its last sinew. So we understand the constraints that we have, and the margin for error is so much more. So yeah, we try to help improve any environment where there is fragile legacy systems, and overcome security risks, and alleviate manual processes that can also help or increase the costs that quietly kind of creep in the environment. So it's trying to help you change safely, sustainably, but on your terms, really.
So far, we've been talking about cloud migration and infrastructure. A big part of this webinar is how AI can help with that. And AI is in an interesting place right now. It's so overhyped, but also massively underused at the exact same time. And I was using the cloud migration sort of thing back in the the early 2000s when it first came out. Even back then, cloud migration wasn't this overhyped and this underutilized. And I can't remember any time in history that it's been sort of similar to this. But when we think AI, especially in a non-profit environment, we start thinking it associated with chatbots, copilot prompts. If you're a bit further ahead of the curve, you may be building your own agents, but using it in a cloud migration, well, that's just a copy and paste job, right? I don't need AI's help with that. Paul's going to kill me later. But actually, there is AI beyond the fad. There is a huge amount that AI can help with, in sort of consolidating your data, in analyzing trends, analyzing patterns, and a lot of the work is behind the scenes. And there's different types of AI, and a lot of what we refer to AI is just automation. It's not the use with the large language models, but there's a lot of stuff that we're going to run through before, during, and after, where AI can have a really positive sort of so what I'm looking for here, impact on your sort of migration. We want to skip forward. We can actually, I'll hand back to you, and we can talk about so before the migration, what kind of stuff will you be having AI do, Paul?
Well, you want to assess the current state. You want to make sure you initially have a firm grasp on people's systems, their processes, their individuals,
Okay.
and identify opportunities for risk. And a lot will be known within an organisation, but we try to bring in some of the questioning that we would have brought from other larger or smaller scale organizations to kind of challenge that view. So yeah, it's really getting a firm grasp on what you've got there, but also challenging where you want to get to and why you want to adopt AI, because it's everyone's doing it, and trying to get a stronger grasp on what you're looking to do as an outcome is really a keen question to start off with, really, in quality.
It's a good point, and I think I gave you this example the other day, but when I started marketing way too long ago now, when there was a lot more hair on my head and my beard was a lot less white, I'd sort of take interviews with people and it'd be like, right, we need social media, and I've seen this new fad, this Facebook thing, we need it as a business. Awesome. To achieve what?
Yeah.
And they're just you'd see their faces go blank, and it's not a thing to have, it's a tool to accomplish everything. And we're kind of in the same stage with AI right now. There's a lot of pressure from sort of boards and trustees to go, right, we need to be AI first, we need to adopt AI, and quite often nobody ever steps back and says, great, to do what? And it sometimes takes something like this to realize, actually, it's not one great big encompassing thing. It can help with lots of little things, and actually prepping a lot of your stuff before a migration can be really helpful, but it can actually help during as well, right?
And that's what we try to weave in. So some of the technology standpoint, and I don't want to talk about tooling because that kind of detracts from what we're trying to achieve today.
You can talk a little bit about tooling. I'm sure nobody minds.
But AI ops, in terms of some of the underlying tech that we use in automating, can also innovate some a full life cycle AI ops to help your own infrastructure to self-heal, to self-manage. And yeah, I won't go into the weeds because it's not the proper form right now, but certainly it's a further discussion if people are interested in that. But we tend to during the during phase work collaboratively with the teams, and rather than take away a project and just to look on delivering the outcomes, smaller organisations benefit from us working more closely and collaboratively. So we tend to try to enable whilst delivering. We know people have got their day jobs, but also if they understand some of the mechanics of what we're looking to do, there is enablement along the way. So it's using best practice and automation where possible is really the kind of the during phase. And then moving on the after phase, it's continuous improvement is the mindset. It's always been mandated within the business before I was part of Formus Pro. So it's refreshing that actually the mindset that we adopt, it was always kind of inherent in the business beforehand. But to make transformation stick, you've got to monitor the outcomes, continually optimize your processes, and plan to do.
It doesn't have to be done manually anymore, right?
No, and that's the antithesis of what we look to do. It's a polar opposite. We look to make sure that automation is embedded in every aspect.
Awesome. I like the phrase AI ops though, because obviously there was DevOps and there was DevSecOps. Are you trying to sneak in another couple of DevSec AI ops? Is that the new new trend that's going to be coming out?
AOps has been around for a while, but it is it's very much an underlying process that isn't shouted about enough, I think. But certainly if people are interested, happily have a more protracted conversation about it.
Right. So skipping forward, we've covered at its heart, AI is going to be removing manual problems, and we've obviously got an entire data and AI practice to help manage and clean your data. Microsoft Fabric does a fantastic job there, and Paul's going to go crazy at me if we start talking security, because this isn't what this webinar is about. But we can then bring in Microsoft Purview to help secure your data as well, and a lot of the AI can help with roles. But AI is great at managing roles and making sure people have the right access or don't have the access they require. But
Yeah,
beyond that, it's sorry.
I was going to say, environments are complex. So
Yes,
with
very.
anything with complexity, it increases risks. And anyone who's running an IT business, they want to reduce risk, and that's often better getting discovery of what you've got and where you've got it, and getting some sort of federated repository so you can kind of got a grasp on where your data resides. So I think often best practice would be to simplify and standardize. And again, that is something that I think is really important for anyone who wants to get those guardrails in place to adopt a proper
You took the words right out of my mouth. It's just removing complexity, because you look at a big sort of infrastructure project and it's like, whoa, anything that we can automate, anything that we can get AI to do so that your teams can focus on the mission critical stuff is going to be important. And I think that's a key point. Is I'm going to stop calling AI a fad, because I'm worried somebody from Microsoft is going to sort of like parasail through my window and sort of have a word. But AI isn't a fad. It's here to stay. It's not going anywhere. But there are still times where AI is overhyped and actually you don't need it. And there are things that Paul will be doing without AI as well. So if we want to sort of skip forward slightly, AI isn't going to help you with your strategy for your cloud migration. And I'm assuming, Paul, you can help with that. It will definitely not help you with your internal politics. That's HR's jobs. It definitely isn't going to replace governments. I hope it doesn't replace governments. Governance. And it isn't going to make unclear ownerships disappear. And this is the point that people miss with both AI in general and cloud migrations. That human element isn't disappearing, it's just changing from a doing role to a supervisory role, which is a lot less hands-on and lets people, as I say, focus on their mission critical stuff. Would you agree, or have I just made that all up?
No. And there's barriers to adoption. People's aging infrastructure and disconnected data makes it harder for companies to do any kind of thoughts of it just makes it difficult. So it also prevents innovation, so you're leaving such little room for it. So the better we are at kind of training our own internal teams to work in a more cohesive, collaborative way, will give us a better progress to adopting AI, because you need to work less siloed, less disparate. You need people to kind of work more collaboratively. And AI really is trying to evolve so quickly, and unless you get those foundations right and work in a more kind of modern way, it's harder to try to innovate in those respects. So AI is here to stay. It's not going anywhere. So trying to make sure that we can kind of do as much as possible as early as possible to prevent us from falling further behind is a imperative.
And a lot of it, I think, actually is setting the outcomes out right to start with. So many digital transformation and cloud migration projects I've seen actually fail just because KPIs weren't set right at the beginning. How do you know if your cloud migration has been a success if you don't set those KPIs? And it's easy to go, well, if we want to skip forward, it's easy to sort of say, well, we're in a new environment, so clearly it was a success. But actually, if you haven't measured that, if you haven't measured your costs, your data usage, your this, your that, how do you know, was there any point moving in the first place? And actually sitting down with somebody like Paul at the very beginning and going, look, this is really what we want to achieve. It's not the actual moving isn't the outcome. The actual moving is almost the byproduct. The outcome has to be what you want at the end of it. And there's a whole host of stuff there that I'm assuming you're about to start talking about, Paul.
Well, exactly. But I think it says it in there, cuts down repetitive manual effort, lowers operational risk. Ensuring your uptime and the availability of infrastructure is what is required for AI as a simple foundation. AI tools make effective real-time decisions, and they rely on your data from whatever source it is, to be accurate and there for when they need it. So you can use real world examples of, I suppose, patient data in a hospital. If that falls down, and you haven't got access to that in a real world environment, it's pointless having an AI driven operations kind of
a surprising number of non-profits hold quite a lot of sensitive data. You'd be amazed. They sometimes put the NHS to shame.
But yeah, so looking at the infrastructure is where we look at, and I touched on earlier in terms of AI operations. Once you've got some automation around your provisioning of environments, for instance, there is you have the ability to self-heal infrastructure. I'm trying not to use any tools terms, but we use a specific market leading vendors tools, and they've got an open source version and a paid for version, and we aren't wedded to either way, because actually the open source version is so evolved that actually many non-for-profits can still leverage the functionality, but without having the cost attached to it. But there's ways that they can get some automation put into their environments where they can use automation to respond to IT events and resolve issues and self-heal issues by reacting. For instance, if there is an environment, their memory usage on a server has a predefined threshold to hit 80%, and rather than that being flagged in a ticket in a queue and someone else responding to it, you can actually run a playbook, and off it trots, and it then automates provisioning of putting more CPU and more memory in, and it can then self-heal and provision that in the environment, and no human intervention is needed whatsoever. And that's kind of an example of what AI does within a bit of automation, if you like. So that's not even generative AI or anything new that's kind of looking at. It's just a simple AI operations cycle running itself.
Wow. Clever. And one of the things that I wanted us to cover, because again, it was one of the things that surprised me most when I started working with you, and by the way, it's been a pleasure. I should probably point that, and if we skip forward, that we talk about cloud migrations, and the word migration, because especially as a marketer, I deal with words daily. Migration has quite a big connotation. It sounds huge, but it's not, right? It doesn't have to be. You can do the great big huge lift and shift, but instead it can be a much smaller, much more gradual process. And actually, a lot of the time, it seems to me, at least, certainly with our non-profit clients, that's almost the approach you prefer.
To be honest, across the board, a stage process lets you move incrementally. You can test, you can learn, reduce risks, you can build confidence within the business. A controlled, deliberate change instead of high risk leap is definitely no two ways about it. Deploy safely and fast can be done, but we tend to try to get people just get some confidence into the initial early stage migration. So definitely. What I do really like though is for people to adopt automation. So before AI automation, you can automate so many repetitive tasks within a business, and anyone who's going through a Cyber Essentials or Cyber Essentials Plus, they are often required to demonstrate where they can patch environments and I touched on it a little bit earlier, that actually you can reduce a lot of these times by getting proper automation in that isn't high cost and it isn't particularly complex, can be done in a brief amount of time, but we can do that with enablement. So and then it frees up your teams to do other higher value tasks, essentially.
Awesome.
Yeah.
So moving on, what we don't want to do. So far we've been sort of talking a lot of theory. We've been talking around the subject. It's always nice, I find, to end a webinar with a bit of practical help. So a big part of our marketing strategy is giving away the knowledge for free. There's nothing massively secret about what we do. It just is quite technical, and we're happy to take those technical load off you, but there is stuff you can do yourselves before we ever get involved, or before any partner gets involved, to be honest with you. And a lot of that is actually just stopping, taking a minute and conducting a simple assessment, because you'd be amazed how many times people just don't look at their own infrastructure and go, all right, well, what keeps breaking, or to put it in Paul's language, what's fragile at the moment? What do we dread going wrong? Slightly harder, what's undocumented? Because that's what do you have notes for? If going back to Bob, if Bob's on holiday or Bob's left, has he left instructions for everything? Is it documented? Because if it's not, that's actually something you can do in-house yourself to save a lot of money. And again, referencing Bob, what depends on just one person? That has to, with any kind of migration, that has to change. What's generating us costs, but we can't see a direct value attached to it? That needs to go straight away. And this is the big one, where are we guessing? And it's normally at this point that we get called in, because again, you don't know what you don't know, so we can help with where you're guessing. But I'm going to hand over to you to sort of round this off, Paul. These I'll give them a bunch of stuff that they can either ask, we say ask us, but ask their current sort of partner some awkward questions that really should have been answered and they should have an answer to already. And if you get what are the right answers that they're looking for out of these?
Well, obviously we've touched on it all the way through, that and you said you don't know what you don't know, but I'm very keen for organizations to ensure they scrutinize the way that they work, because if you want to adopt change, you can't keep doing what you've been doing without evolving. So it's collaborating with your teams to implement changes effectively, remove the silos within business to make sure people are collaborating and effectively working together, and there's no fight with each other in terms of the business. So that's how dev and operations works, and that's DevOps. So you're making sure that people are effectively looking to release applications into production, but collaboratively. It saves time. It saves the politics as well. But yeah, really, I suppose questioning initially the motives of what you're looking to try to accomplish, and scrutinize the way the teams are working. That gives us a foundation of kind of understanding what you're looking to accomplish, and then we can really kind of scrutinize where you are technology wise to help either discover what you need to kind of consolidate in your environment, or put the guardrails in to help you take those next steps confidently without it being overwhelming and too scary. Or once you're there, also you may also be a bit more further down the line. You might just want to scrutinize actually the costs that are you're already incurring as a result of some of the cloud migration that you've already done, and whether it's even effective. So open questions and honest answers are probably the best way to.
Sorry, I was sort of smiling to myself, and I wanted to apologise because it wasn't yourself I was sort of grinning at, but I think you unconsciously sort of channeled my first ever CTO from sort of like 15, 20 years ago. And he always had this saying was, if you always do what you've always done, you're always going to get what you've always had. And you said nearly the exact same thing, and it's especially in the world of AI, it's a great question. And it's not just with cloud migrations, it's the wider digital transformation projects. We're at that stage where we just can't keep doing what we've always done. If you work for a non-profit, you know how noisy the market is. Your services have never been in more demand, but unfortunately there's so many non-profits out there, and there's only so many people giving. You have to run leaner, you have to be more competitive, and it's not nice to think like that, but it is becoming a bit of requirement, and there can't be anything within your organization that's not pulling towards that goal. And automation is unfortunately a large
Very
part
cool.
of that.
You've got to avoid any unnecessary extra costs,
Yes.
but add the guardrails for security and future proofing. That's what it's all about.
Well, that's about it. So we're going to give you sort of 15 minutes, but I would love to speak to anybody on the subject of AI or non-profits or AI in non-profits. So if you ever just want a 10, 20 or 3-hour chat with me, feel free to connect with me on LinkedIn. I'm sure Paul will be incredibly excited to sort of talk infrastructure. Or if you just want to follow Foremost Pro on LinkedIn, our social media exec would love that. So grab the QR codes. They're all there. I know they're working because I fixed them all this morning because they weren't. So you can connect with us there. If not, it's been absolutely amazing. We'll send this recording out to you probably Monday once I've edited out all our ums and ahs and actually made it sound like we're competent public speakers. And referring to myself there only, Paul. But goodbye and thank you from me.
Lovely to meet you all.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.